Karyn Bryant for MMA H.E.A.T. I'm here once again with Steven Marrocco from MMA Junkie. It is time for our UFC 144 post-fight analysis. And Steven, I thought it was a great show. I did okay on my picks. Didn't get them all right. How'd you do?
I think I was about 50-50, but I think the judges had a lot to do with that. There was some judging shenanigans that I think went on, and I think not to what everybody might think about the main event, but Akiyama versus Shields I thought was a little cockeyed, and then of course, yeah, and then Mitsugaki versus Kariaso. I think everybody felt the same on that one. That was a pretty ridiculous decision. Other than that, I think I did okay.
Yeah, I did okay. Let's start off on the card. One that I did get wrong. I picked Lauzon against Pettis. Partly a little bit because I'm a Massachusetts girl and I think he's a wicked good fighter. And I like that he sort of surprises people when he's not expected to win and he wins. I knew it was going to be a difficult fight, but Pettis obviously looked great and took it with the KO of the night.
Yeah, hard to really say a whole lot about the fight because it really just it didn't last for that long. It was just, you pretty much set him up with a high kick and got him. Lauzon thought it was a low kick and took one to the side of the head. So props to Pettis for, drawing him in, coming back, getting Joe to come forward and then plastering him with that head kick. So again, this is the kind of performance, as obviously, with Dana saying that he's going to be next to get the title shot. This was the kind of performance that he needed to really get him on there. Get to where he needed to be and get to where a lot of people thought he should have been when he first came into the UFC, which is, a title contender.
How do you think he would do against Bendo this time?
I think Bendo made some tactical mistakes the first time that they fought. I watched the fight before watching this past Saturday's headliner. And I think that Bendo made some tactical mistakes in not pulling the trigger and being second a little bit too much. Also, his wrestling. He wasn't really successful in keeping Pettis down and keeping Pettis from being offensive and getting back to his feet. And then when the fight was on its feet, I think he was just second a little bit too much. I think both of those guys have improved a lot. Pettis obviously with his wrestling and his striking, and Bendo is going to try and turn up the pace a little bit, be a little bit more aggressive this time around. So it's going to be a very, very interesting, fun, action-packed fight.
I'm looking forward to it, and we'll talk some more about Ben and Frankie. But I want to move on to Hatsu Hioki and Bart Palaszewski. Hioki looked amazing, and it was interesting there. I don't know if you remember, Joe invoked Phil Baroni at the beginning of that fight and saying that Phil had a theory that Asian fighters do better on their own turf, that flying east to west is harder than west to east. And I had to sort of agree that I thought some of the guys looked better than they had been in their last, shows here stateside. But Hioki with that almost crazy, ridiculous armbar. I mean, I thought he looked terrific. I thought that was a good, fun fight.
Absolutely. He justified the hype. He came in with a lot of hype. He was once one of the top-ranked featherweights out there. A lot of people thought he was going to be the next big thing, and then he came in with Roop, and he really didn't look that great. He pretty much controlled Roop and played the point game. This time around, it was a completely different story, and it really set the tone when he cracked him with that punch early in the fight. I think, as I said in my write-up, I think that Bart was operating from a deficit from that point on. Yeah. Obviously, he's a tough guy. He can come back, and that's what he did in the second round. But when it comes to the ground game, I just don't think that they're on the same level. I think that Hioki is just a cut above Bart on the ground, and that obviously showed.
Yeah, it did. I mean, he made it very difficult to escape. He made it very difficult to do anything from the ground, and almost had crucifix, almost had this, almost had that. Just I thought showed a lot, like you said, that we didn't get to see with the Roop fight. And I'm happy now. I'm excited that we've got another guy in there that's as good as he's been said to be.
Yeah, absolutely. The featherweight division needs it, and this definitely was one of those qualifiers. This could put him maybe a fight or two away from a title shot, and I don't know how we do in the striking department against Jose Aldo, but he definitely presents some interesting challenges on the ground. Yeah. So he could be a fight or two away, and it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Cool. Well, I had picked Hioki, and so I got that one right. Let's move on to one that I didn't get right, which was Yushin Okami and Tim Boetsch. And I have to say, when I picked this fight, I picked Okami, and it was really sort of against my heart. I like Tim Boetsch a lot. I think he's a surprising guy. I think once he dropped down to 185, that was a really, really smart move for him. This is his third win in a row at that new weight after the Phil Davis fight. Kind of taught him, like, wait a minute, I should drop. it was one of those where it really looks like he's losing the fight, and then comes back and boxes his way into the victory. And I was happy for him. I thought Okami, obviously, though, put up a great fight.
Yeah, and the thing was, you were right in your pick for the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked amazing.
Yeah.
He looked, better than I think he's looked in a long time. With the Marquardt fight, he looked really tentative there, and obviously we all know what happened with Silva. But this time out, he was very, very impressive. Very impressive in the pocket, the way he put together combinations, the way he threw that jab out there. He's just kick to the bodies. Very, very impressive stand-up skills, and I think better at Boetsch in counter wrestling. So,
Sure.
You were right, and I think everybody who picked Okami was right in the first rounds. How can you see that third round coming? It's just one of those things where he got clipped, he got hurt, and Boetsch, you got to give it up to him, man.
Yeah.
He put him away. He nailed that. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen, if I could illustrate this, an uppercut coming from that angle from clinch. It was just one of those things. That's, I think, why they call him the Barbarian, because he'll get on you and hit you and hurt you any way he can. I think that's it's really my hat's off to him on that.
Sure, and I'm not sure who he should fight next. It's funny though. I got a couple of tweets, and one guy was like, "Oh, can we put Okami and Bisping together because they both just lost close fights?" And this and that. I'm like, I don't know. Let me first think about who Boetsch should fight, and what about Boetsch Bisping? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, Bisping just lost, and I think, traditionally winners go with winners and losers go with losers.
Sure.
I don't necessarily oppose that. I think it's an interesting fight. It's one of the ones that I thought about. I was thinking actually about the winner of Husamar Palhares versus Belcher.
Sure.
Or perhaps Chris Weidman.
Weidman, right. Well, that's true. He just fought. I'm actually interested to see Belcher come back, coming back again and seeing, I know he had something going on already, but first, the eye. But yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think that Weidman obviously presents an interesting style. Yes, it is interesting, as a matter of fact. So I think Weidman, presents an interesting stylistic challenge. He's obviously, I think, he might present some challenges to Boetsch on the ground, and the way he puts wrestling together with submissions. Mm-hmm. Then on the other hand, Husamar versus Belcher. If it's Belcher, that's just going to be a barn burner. Both of those guys throw really hard, and Palhares, obviously, it's a question of whether he can get it to the ground.
Yeah, right.
So. Tim earned it, and hats off to him.
Yeah, right on. Okay, now let's move on to one that I did pick correctly. I picked Jake Shields over Sexyama, and Sexyama wins in the fabulous tan department, certainly. but an interesting first fight for him at 170, and I thought that's a good move for him. But, now this is 4 losses in a row. I thought Jake played a smart game, worked the jab, worked this, worked that, tried for the takedowns. I mean, great takedown defense from Sexyama for sure. But I'm happy to see Jake back in the winning column. I know that the fight he took right after his dad passed away was a very difficult, call, obviously mentally, and that fight didn't go his way. I thought the fight with Ellenberger, people argue whether or not Jake was really out from that punch, and if you talk to Nick Diaz and Gilbert, they say that Jake takes shots harder than the one that Ellenberger had given him, and that he can suck that up, and that he wasn't really out in that fight. So I don't know about that, but I was happy to see Jake on the win column, and I clearly thought he won. I know some people didn't.
How did you score that fight? That's my question for you.
Well, it was late, Stephen. I was at a wedding, and I came home.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm only putting you on the spot because that was one of the things that I thought was a little bit off. And this is kind of a running theme as we'll get closer to the main event. Yeah. But you have a question of strikes versus significant strikes.
Sure.
Akiyama resisted all but one takedown.
Right.
Maybe 2. Briefly, Jake got it. And to me, when he hit Jake, he hurt Jake.
Okay.
As opposed to Jake playing more of the volume game. I don't disagree that Jake won the fight purely based on that volume game, especially in the third round, and especially getting back mount at the end of the third round. But I wouldn't have, unanimous 30-27 scores, I think, are ridiculous. Especially that first round, Jake got clocked several times. He got clocked several times in the first and second round, and I would at least go for a 29-28 and not 30-27. So I agree that he won the fight, but I think that the margin by which he was the winner was incorrect.
Right.
Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. We can argue about scoring all day, and people will, but I don't agree with unanimous 30-27 scores.
Okay, I understand that argument. I do understand that. Like I said, yeah, I can understand that argument. But like you said there, a win is a win. I do wonder what Okami does next. Like I said, 4 losses in a row. First loss at a new weight. But what do you think? Does he stay there? Does he hang him up? Does he?
Oh no, it doesn't hang him. But he stays at welterweight.
Yeah.
And he's good at welterweight. Obviously, we saw he's he's more explosive at welterweight. Now look, this could be again the Japanese effect. Maybe he's fighting on home turf. He feels more comfortable.
Sure.
He really brought it here. If the UFC is going to go back to Japan on a yearly basis, which I'm a little questionable about, I think that you obviously want to keep a guy like Akiyama around.
Right.
Maybe try and build him back up. Maybe give him a lower tier guy or a mid tier guy that he can get a win or two under his belt. Because I think he's definitely marketable. I think
very.
He's sexy. I think he's just so sexy. That's got to keep him around, right? So. Stay at welterweight. Maybe give him a lower tier guy. Let him build himself back up. And next time you come to Japan, give him the shot.
Okay. Well, somebody who's been through the several losses in a row and come back is Mark Hunt. He took out Cheick Kongo last night with just clocked him, basically. Let's just say just clocked him. I picked that fight incorrectly. And
well, wait a minute. You have history with that camp, so you see more of that camp than you have of Hunt, right?
Yes, it's not a surprise. I picked Congo and Rampage to win, but we'll get to the Rampage thing in a minute. But I don't know. Mark Hunt is such an interesting guy. Like he really is. So you ever see him at a press conference and you see him with Joe after? He says so little, and is so just I fight, I win, I don't, or whatever. And some people now are asking, what about Mark Hunt and Pat Barry? I don't know. That could be sort of fun. I think Mark definitely looked better than he did against Ben Rothwell at that fight in Denver. Obviously, the altitude was not kind to him. I think he looked better last night. And obviously for him, it was fun to be back in Japan. That meant a lot, I believe, and probably maybe fired him up extra for that fight. But, I don't know. There was a whole bunch to say about that one.
Yeah, it was a mugging, pretty much. So, what can you say about Hunt? I think that the main thing to say about Hunt is that he'll be great until he runs into a guy who can wrestle more than he can.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how I break it down. Kongo's mistake was obviously not wrestling soon enough.
Right.
Kongo, I think, could have taken him down against the fence. That's what he's done against Mitrione, and he's done that in a bunch of his fights. Buentello, another dangerous striker that he took down. And it was really just an issue of him getting caught and maybe just hanging out a little bit too long. At the same time, he did try and shoot, and Hunt just shrugged him off. So I think the main thing I have to say with Hunt is that it's a great turnaround story. He's a phenomenal fighter on his feet. Obviously, world-class K1 skills, extraordinarily durable.
Yeah.
And it's really just an issue of who can out-wrestle him.
Right. I would like to see him drop a couple pounds.
Yeah, it could be he could go on the Nelson diet, if he wanted to, or get Mike Dolce in his corner, one of those things. But it's one of those things where there are certain fighters that would, like Pat Barry, that'd be a tremendously fun fight. Stefan Struve, I think
just to see that, because I don't know if you noticed anyway, Kongo's waistline was right at like Mark's, pecs, let's say.
Yeah. But that didn't matter. He got in.
Obviously. But I'm just saying, to see Struve and Hunt would be pretty comical.
And seeing anybody against Struve is comical. The guy is just, extraordinary. He's 6'11". That's crazy. The Pat Barry thing was hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm good for another laugh. I don't know how much relevance that has, given the fact that Mark has won 3 in a row now.
Yeah.
But, he basically just beat the guy that a lot of people consider to be the gatekeeper of the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
Cheick Kongo basically clears you for top-tier fights. So you could give him Struve. Struve just beat his guy, right? Am I having a brain? Yeah, so you could give him Struve, or you could give him a couple other guys. He's not ready for a title. I won't say that. But maybe Nogueira, I don't know.
Right.
A couple guys that I think would be really interesting for him.
Interesting. You've got mail.
I've got mail. Actually, I've got text.
So moving on to the other fight that I picked incorrectly of the night was Rampage versus Ryan Bader. Once you saw Rampage come in overweight, a lot of people adjusted their bets and everything, and you could tell that there was some sort of injury. And if he says he can't do cardio, so that really basically means knee back or hip, basically, if you can't work on that. Turns out, I guess it was the knee. I felt disappointed. Certainly, I wanted to see the Rampage of old go in there and tear it up, and he had that flash of that crazy slam, and where it almost looked like, my God, what Ryan's neck, and I mean that was just an ugly slam. But not to say that Ryan won only because Rampage looked bad, because I thought Ryan did obviously a very good job last night, and himself, after losing to Tito and his last fight against Brills looked good, and last night looked great too. So to take nothing away from Ryan, who I think is getting himself back on track, like he was the contender before, the prospect, and everybody had so much great stuff to say about him. I think it's nice that he's getting back to who he was and looking sharp again.
So putting aside for a second the injury and the history, why did you pick Rampage?
Because I believe that his power was going to be too much, and that if he landed a hook or uppercut, I felt like he could punch Ryan into tomorrow if it landed right.
I agree. I that would be the reason that I picked Jackson. I think that's the reason why a lot of people would pick Jackson, is if he connected with his hands, which he was bound to do at some point, then he'd really hurt Ryan. Yeah. But you got to give Ryan credit. He's really he did exactly what he said he was going to do, which is to confuse Rampage and to keep him off balance, basically. When he was striking, Rampage was not first. He was a little bit slower, and then when he was doing the takedowns, Ryan was a little bit ahead of him. So Ryan knew exactly what he was getting into, because other than the takedown attempts by Jackson, he looked a lot like he does. And then if you compound that with the knee injury, he wasn't exactly moving at 100% either. So it was really his fight to win, and it became even more his fight to win given the circumstances. I think that Rampage is nearing the end of things, and these lingering injuries and his attitude towards the long term of the sport. I'm not going to say he hates training. I know he hates when people say that. I respect that he likes to train, but I think that maybe what would really do him best is traveling around to different gyms and really become a student again. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he's willing to do that. I could be completely wrong, but I think it's time to get some new looks if he wants to continue doing this. And if not, then it's hard to say what's really next. He's a very marketable guy. He'll always be marketable, but I think his days as a top-tier guy are coming to an end.
Yeah. And who would you like to see Ryan fight, though?
I was thinking about, they could kind of make the argument for Hendo. If Hendo needs a fight, he's got some time off. He needs a fight. They could give him a couple of former champions. They could give him Mauricio. They could give him Shogun.
Machida?
Yeah, they could give him Machida. They could give him Griffin, because I think Ortiz Griffin is on hold right now.
I think so. Right.
Those are the ones that came to mind, and it's really just a matter of how they want to play it. The former champ angle, I think, works because it gives the guys a chance like Machida and Hua a chance to bounce back if that's what's going to happen, and if not, it builds Ryan into a bigger star.
Right.
If he goes with Henderson, I don't know if he's ready for Henderson, but if they're down for the challenge, every fighter's got to be down for the challenge. So I'm interested to see it if he wants to do it, and if Hendo is willing to accept it.
Right. That will be interesting. Like I said, I'm happy to see Ryan back in a position of getting some nice fights for himself, because he is a good guy and a good fighter. Let's move on to the main event now that I did correctly.
You did? Okay, so another question for you. Why did you,
I do believe Bendo won. I didn't think it was... I thought it was a great fight, and I thought there was a lot of back and forth, but I thought it was obvious that he won.
I did too, but tell me why you picked it. Tell me why. What were the reasons you thought?
It was funny because in a part of the ways it wasn't even for a particular reason so much as bigger, stronger, more rubbery, more. What's the word I'm looking for? Just can take a lot, as can Frankie. But I just felt like the bigness, for lack of a better word, and the abilities he has compounded with the strength that the bigness would bring was going to do it.
you weren't wrong. And I was completely wrong. I thought that Edgar would, look, he just fought Gray Maynard. Gray Maynard's one of the biggest lightweights in the division.
Yeah.
His skill set is a little bit different, and this was pointed out to me very, very pointedly by my next door neighbor who was watching the fight on the couch.
Yeah.
And, he uses kicks more. Bendo uses kicks more. He's a little bit more explosive. He's a little bit more dynamic. Maynard's more of a boxer wrestler.
Yeah.
So if you looked at all the weapons combined, and then you add the size to it, it became really clear to me that when Bendo landed, Frankie got hurt. And Frankie landed a lot of shots, and some would say more. By the way, Copy Strike and Fight Maker don't agree with each other.
Right.
So there's obviously, we've got to take a look at that, how these things are being not only scored, but tallied, because, the media looks to these things and they oftentimes base their arguments on these things. And if they're not agreeing, then there's obviously something going on there.
Right.
Anyway, so it's, I thought that Edgar would put together the combinations and outwork Bendo, and I was completely mistaken. The size, basically as I think Brett from ESPN pointed out correctly, this was a good run, but now we figured out, really, size doesn't matter.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, girls figured that out a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I also, how about that up kick? Ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous up kick. And again, I said this about Frankie even when he beat Edgar. When he beat Gray the second time, when he knocked him out. His bell has gotten rung badly on several occasions. Right. And I think that changes a fighter. I mean, these are not punches that you just, in my opinion, they're not punches you just simply recover from and everything goes back to normal. You get your ticket punched. Yeah. And you only get so many punches at the ticket. And every fighter gets a different amount.
Yeah.
Based on a lot of different things, genes, how they train, right. all that different stuff. But Frankie has a tendency, when he gets hit hard, he flashes. He goes out momentarily. And that's not going to get better as his career progresses. That's going to get worse. And this was a shot that, obviously he didn't see coming. Yeah. And he recovered from it, no doubt. He's one of the toughest guys in the world when it comes to recovery. But, again, the power difference was just too much to overcome, I think.
I personally don't want an immediate rematch on that. I'm much more interested in watching Pettis and Bendo go at it again, or just to see some new matchups there. I'm not in the, oh my gosh, he needs an immediate rematch school thought.
Neither am I. I completely agree with you. I don't see what the hubbub is about the score. I think in my scorecard, it was 4-1 Bendo.
Yeah.
You could make the argument for 3-2, but I didn't see 3-2 Edgar. I think he stole it. And that's not just based on damage. That's based on effective striking versus volume striking.
Right.
And played out over a 5-round fight, it's a much larger canvas. So I don't. The immediate rematch isn't a big deal for me. It wasn't for Diaz Condit. I think Pettis versus Bendo is a good fight, and I'm anxious to see it.
Me too. I do wish Bendo would tie his hair back more, though. I know this sounds silly, but I find that it seems like it.
It's almost as if you would speak from experience about hair issues.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of time he's pulling his hair back, brushing it out of his face. I always want him to get it. Just like a cornrow, he needs to do something so it's not a distraction. Obviously, it doesn't really make a difference, but it bugs me.
Would you like to put his hair in cornrows? Is that what you're saying? Or, would you like to style his hair in some way that would be a little bit less?
I don't know what I would do, Jess.
That would be great. That would be a great video, by the way. That would be awesome. Doing the whole thing and doing the interview from maybe the barber chair or something like that. Sure. That'd be fun.
Yeah, because for the record, I don't know how to do cornrows. It's not like I don't know how to do that. I can do a basic braid, but it's not like I'm the one doing it. But honestly, I felt like at times the pushing it out of the way and the distraction of it is just fix it. Drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But anyway, all in all, great show. Some good storylines coming out of there. I think it was a terrific event. Sydney is next. Perhaps we'll do a pre-fight this time, Steven, and work that out. I'm looking forward to Alves and Campman. It's going to be a fun fight.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Now, I know you've got a dodgeball game to get to. Or is it kickball?
It's dodgeball. I've got to hit some people in the face. It's much more satisfying.
Nice. Well, thank you, Steven. It's good to see you as always, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.